This is the Shijia Hutong Museum. We're open until 4:30. Hello. I found out about this place from the Time Out website. It's pretty new. It's not in any of the guidebooks yet. So it's the hot ticket in town. It's actually important because it's explaining, interpreting the fast disappearing Hutongs and lending credence to reason for their preservation. On the way here, I passed the the Galaxy Soho, going right up to the Jiwa, which had the Jiwa Temple had a music performance that was a pleasant, unexpected treat of ancient music going on. So, Siheyuan is the quadrangle courtyards that the actual houses, and a hutong is an alley. Sometimes you'll see it used xiang, same thing. Sometimes in Shanghai they were called lilong. They're just the back streets where everybody lives. The middle and poorer classes who can't afford to live in modern housing with all the accoutrements of sanitation. A lot of these places have communal bathrooms still. Beijing dialect fills your ears. Uniquely close-knit neighboring relations warming your heart. Excuse me. Yeah, the Prince's Charities Foundation gave him $5 million, I think, to swing this museum. Only fitting. All that the British have profited off the backs of Chinese, working class Chinese. Going back to the Opium War. The origin of the Hutong. So hopefully I can get through all this. Xiang Alley. They think it comes from the word Mongolian for well. I've heard that before. Transliteration. Han Dynasty, Hong, pronounced separately as Hudong. Liu Dynasty, Jin Dynasty, Hudong, commonly used northern China during the Ming. Name Hutong, officially given, where symbol for walk on the side of a couple symbols here indicating Hutong's an alley where people walked. Dong, but not the symbol for east, is it? Pathway, I guess, or courtyard. Hutong, an essential element, Chinese cities. It goes all the way back to the Western Zhou period. We've got the symbol there for Li. Sketch showing classic city planning. 9 longitudinal main streets and latitudinal main streets in a grid formation. Record of trades. Rights of Zhou. Dadu under Kublai Khan, developed based on the ideal city layout described in the Record of Trade section of the Rights of Zhou. Residential neighborhoods are fongs, formed along main streets. Within each fong, hutongs planned at regular distances for pedestrians. The Yuan dynasty is the Mongol reign when Kublai Khan was in power. So these are temples. Here's the imperial city. It used to go all the way out past the seas here, Nanjing and Bihai. And the Ming kind of moved the wall into here. Front lakes area and back lakes. Aerial view, Old Beijing, Hutong neighborhood. City planning, Beijing, Manhattan, similar longitudinal, latitudinal road grid, easy partitioning, selling off of lands. Dense roads also provide large areas for street shops, increasing the business and employment and increasing the value of land. 49, this kind of grid layout made it possible for 1.3 million people to live within 62.5 kilometers. Square kilometers, Beijing's Old Town. Now it's about 24 million, I think. Standard neighborhood, Yuan Dadu. Shijia Hutong, Yuan Dynasty Dadu. Located near Qihua Men Gate, today's Kaoyang Men Gate. It's a subway stop I got off, which is it was part of Xicheng Fang. Development of Beijing Old City, relative location Shijia Hutong. This is the Imperial City and the Chinese City that they're showing here. Maybe out here on this map, wouldn't we? Origin of city planning, Kublai Khan constructed Yuan Dadu based on Zhou, Manhattan blocks. 1573, King Philip of Spain compiled laws of the Indies that specified a grid plan for new communities. Teotihuacan near modern-day Mexico City is the largest ancient grid plan site in North America. 17th to 18th centuries, this system was widely applied American colonies by England and France. Start of city planning 1267 and here 1811. If you're going to use the Western tradition, you could go all the way back to Greece or Rome. +700 meters, standard width Yuan dynasty, similar to width of the palace compound. There are also hutongs around 200 meters or shorter. Road grid standard length, width, and function. Latitudinal streets primarily used for residential purposes and longitudinal ones for commercial. Shijia. Administrative districts rearranged since the north wall of the original Yuan Dadu has moved south. Shijia Hutong neighborhood then merged into Huanghuafang. I see what they're saying. Originally, it was a whole different area that was named Shijia, huh? After the Shi family. Jia is street. Famous Ming Dynasty official Shi Kefa. Laws in Ming Dynasty prohibited building illegal houses, encroaching public land in hutongs. They were very strictly implemented, so even today we can still find architectural layouts from that period of time. This is the map in the Ming. They still had the imperial part of the city out here, huh? Line 2 kind of roughly goes around. Where the walls were. Record of hutongs, capital. Records of hutongs in the capital written by Zhang Jue. Ming Dynasty documented over 900 hutongs. Beijing's inner city, over 300 hutongs in its outer city during reign of the Ming Emperor Jiajing. Shijia Hutong belonged to Huanghuafang neighborhood. Brick carving, Beijing courtyards. Here's some people inside the double gate. This is Qianmen, 1421, Yongle. Moved the capital to Beijing. Rebuilt the city on the basis of the Yuan Dadu. This painting depicts prosperous scene of Beijing at the time, which also helped Shijia Hutong to thrive. Map of Ming Dynasty capital. Letter about moving office suburban cigarette administration to Shijia Hutong. Detailed document about renovation of Shijia. There's a model here. (1957 to 59) is this? So when I first got here to Hong Kong, to Beijing, I didn't understand why they made such a big deal about the Hutongs, but I was on Nanlu-gu Xiang, which is like China 2.0, and they took the main Hutong of Nanlu-gu and turned it into small commercial, candy store stuff and snack shops. And the Hutongs, if you just go right off Nanlu-gu and explore them, especially at night, there's some old mansion houses that belong to artists and famous people that are open during the day, but at night they kind of come alive and there's little restaurants and bars, and you get to see what they mean about the street life there, very local places where people go to hang out and kind of have this real strong sense of community. And there's tiny little shops in people's houses and the fronts of courtyards and things like that. Some bars are in the courtyards and restaurants. It's real nice. That's like China 1.0 probably, I would think, like the little shops and everything anyway, after they move away from the agricultural aspect. And you have these tiny little shops, little entrepreneurs opening up shops in the 70s and 80s maybe. That's my interpretation. And then by the time you get over to like Sanlitun, Nanlu-gu, you get to see the transition between the Hutongs and Nanlu-gu, China 1.0, 2.0. Then Sanlitun, Bar Street, China 2.0, to the village across the street with an Apple store that's China 3.0. There's no difference between it and any industrialized Western country. New and old plates of Shijia Hutong. These are all the address nameplates. The review on Time Out said the person who started this was a college student who wanted to preserve the history. He had fond memories. I think he went to school abroad and came back, and they quoted him as saying, he remembers what it was like to grow up in these, and holes in the roof, rain coming in when it rained on you, and kind of stuff. But the idea is essentially a courtyard layout. I was also comparing it to Suzhou when I came here, because you read guidebooks and you get such a different perspective on what the Sihiyuan is. You think, oh, courtyard home is like kind of like Suzhou, but this is like, in Suzhou, the homes that are preserved, the courtyard homes tourists go into, are like the humble administrator's gardens, like, pretty high up official at the provincial level, pouring all his money into making, a wonderful garden for himself. Like even Master of Nets is this beautiful garden inside. These are where the middle to lower class people were living, even though like by Nanlu-gu they have Prince Zheng's mansion and all that going back centuries before, but this is what it would have looked like. You would have had a small little garden space, maybe even a double courtyard, but essentially, it would have been very similar to the villa style in the Mediterranean, but again, not rich people's villas, middle class people, to lower class people. Traditionally, the entrance is in the southeast corner for good feng shui, and this is like a double courtyard essentially, and the elders live in the backs, and door houses on the sides. There's a really cool map when you go to the front gate at Qianmen, Shenyangmen, that's got Qianlong's map of the city at a 1:650 scale. It's huge. You can play around with it versus the modern aerial view of the city, photography of the city, photographic map. Number 23. North side Shijia Hutong, map of old Beijing, drawn 1750, 15th year Qianlong's reign. Carefully recorded almost every architecture Beijing by then, and according to this map, this courtyard was already built. General Peng Mingji once lived at the residence. I would like to have a little more light shed on the different entrance gates, because they have models of them at the Urban Planning Museum and the Ancient Architecture Museum, but the literature explaining them isn't that great. Essentially, they just get bigger and deeper with more bays for the entrance. The wealthier the person is. Well, it looks like there's a lot to read. I don't want to get it caught up in minutiae and run out of time here. Home of the Manchu bannermen. There's a system set up under the Qing of the 8 banners and administrative divisions for... I thought it was more of a civil administrative thing, huh? Let's see. Han residence, inner city, replaced with mainly Manchurian bannermen. Lived in the inner city to defend the imperial city. Shijia Hutong, in the area bordered white banner. According to the Qing government policy, inner city was residential area of the 8 banners, each with its own assigned area. Within each area from closest to farthest to the imperial city lived the Manchu, Mongolian, and Han banner soldiers and their families. Distribution of 8 banners in the capital, so you can see by each flag where they were living. The idea is essentially like in the Edo capital, the shogun had the daimyo living around him, so that they'd have to, you know, if you were the proletariat peasant serf rising up against the feudal hierarchy, in order to defend your own home, you'd be defending the emperor, whether you liked it or not, if you were the landed gentry. Complete map of capital city drawn in the 15th year of Emperor Qianlong's reign. That's the map I'm talking about. Written records of Shijia Hutong and books from Qing dynasty. I don't know what this is. Late 19th century, Qing Empire became very weak. Capital been semi-colonized. Separation policy between Manchu Han people gradually abandoned. Old city Beijing divided by 8 allied forces as shown in this map. This is after the Boxer Rebellion, when French, German, Americans, we've been carving up for half a century or more, China between us. And we all joined forces to suppress the Boxers, and that's when we loot and burn the Summer Palace. Modern days, Republic of China. Massive new construction. And they talk a lot about this at the Shintandi Museum in Shanghai. Shikumen is the big deal. Here it's Siheyuan, and in Shanghai, Shikumen is the traditional style housing. The Shikumen is actually a blend of Western and townhouses and traditional houses. 1912, Danish legation established the Shao residence, Shijia Hutong. Envoy extraordinary, minister plenipotentiary, Count Ahlefeld. Is that the first Danish diplomat there? Lobby of the Danish legation. King Christian X. He was king 1912 to 47. Queen Alexandrine of Mecklenburg. Schwerin. Folding screen. Maitreya Buddha. It's the fat Buddha, right? Hutong nowadays. "15 multi-story buildings." There's huge, it's the thing about China. It's kind of like being in Houston. It's like no zoning. You'll have like a restaurant next to a huge uh, new apartment complex, next to old hutongs, next to a primary school. Hao Yuan, Red Wall Garden Hotel. That's actually not too bad next door. There's a bigger one a few down the street. Shijia Hutong Community Jurisdiction. Beijing City Master Plan. Hutong Sehe Yuan Architecture. High cultural historical value. They have a lot of them under protection now. I see the plaques around. But then again, I think that area around Drum Tower, they've got all that closed off. Something's going on there. It's getting redone. Is this locked up already? Go on the other side, I guess. I see. I gotta go around the exhibit. That's a cool old tradition. People used to bring their birds out every morning in the parks here. You still see it occasionally. Some of the old tea shops even have hooks for the bird cages. Literati, Li Shu Hua, Chen Shi Ying. Joan Lee. Songs of old Beijing peddlers. Beijing People's Art Theater. Dragon Beard Ditch. People's Art Theater. A lot of things get protected when someone famous or something famous, some institution, was in the building. It's kind of odd. They'll tear something down even if it's beautiful sometimes if there's no historical or cultural relevance. And then they'll take something that an artist might have lived at for a couple months at the end of his life or something and pump millions of dollars to preserve it. Sometimes, it's just theorized that a person lives somewhere and that's enough. You'll see that all over the world. Jiao Juyin went to France. People's Art Theater. Sunrise, Man with a Gun, Three Sisters. Kindergarten. Left-wing Bannerman School. Education for descendants of the 8 Banner families. Literacy in Han Manchu. Combat skills, horse riding, archery. They mentioned that in the online review. 1909, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Qing Government, established administrative office. Got about 20 minutes till they close here. I didn't plan to spend as much time at the Jihua temple as I did, but they have music performances at 3 o'clock, and it went a bit late. of ancient music. I got to see somebody properly playing the sheng, which was neat. There was a guy outside one of the entrances to the Metro People's Square in Shanghai that would play his homemade version of one every day and beg for money. And I knew it was like a folk instrument, but he didn't play it very well. So it was kind of nice to hear one played properly. Shen Xiaoying's family in London. Gathering intellectuals, Beijing Art Association we meet. Dean of College Liberal Arts, National Wuhan University. First Chinese rep for UNESCO. Rabindranath Tagore. Huh. Biography of Mao Zedong. Xu Bihong, Chen Xiying. Famous Shijia Hutong residents. Generals. Let's see. 49. Fu agreed conditions. CCP. Beiping was liberated peacefully. Commander for Kuomintang, huh? Appointed Minister of the Water Conservancy and Hydropower. I went to the Water Tap Museum today. It's not far from here. Shit, the Beijing Waterworks Museum. Sometimes they have English translations on their own literature, like 3 different names. Water Supply Museum, Tap Water Museum. I like Waterworks Museum is a little more historical. And it separates itself from thinking it's a museum of like faucets and knobs or something. Wang Bing Name. Shang Shi Zhou. Xi Ji Ren. Physicians. Artists. Zhu Ya. Liu Gong Liu. Hu Taian Yu. Yang Shu. Hutong Memories. Cultural diffusion. The old social studies class question. Which one of these is an example of cultural diffusion? Teenagers listening to rock music in Red Square. I used to see that on tests in the 90s and go, man, this teacher photocopied this thing like for 2 decades straight. sound booth. Abacus. I think the abacus can be about as fast as a calculator if you're skilled at using it. I saw a demonstration once. They had people with calculators and abacuses. They're just about as fast for calculations into like the hundreds of thousands or millions or something ridiculous. Typical living room from the 50s and 60s. Brick paved ground, whitewashed walls, wooden doors, windows. Some very basic furniture, sewing machine, radio, wristwatch. Would be considered rare commodities. Cold heat stoves, dressed mainly green army uniforms. Now classic images as we recall lines of that period. This is under the PRC. Founded October 1st, 1949. I went to Tokyo. I went to a couple like Meiji era and Showa era museum houses. They kind of go through the same thing. It was a big deal if you could get a TV, radio, refrigerator, or vacuum after the war or before the war. TV sets, refrigerators, washing machine, fancy furniture, economic progress, opening of the economy, rich history in the 21st century, peaceful life, colorful community activities, creative, tolerant, rich in spirit. I walked by a cat pet shop in one of the Hutongs off Nanligu last night. There's a bar run by a expat, I don't know if he's American, with all sorts of brews on tap. Lantern Festival Parade. So it can sometimes be even quite international. Army Day, the Hutongs. You know, young expat people want to live cheaply too. Or at least operate a business, small business, and not have to pay commercial rent spaces in a big mall or something. Handcraft. Some different roof and decorative tiles here. I think if you pair this with a visit to the Urban Planning Museum and the Ancient Architecture Museum at Shuangnong Altar, you get the gist. That in a guidebook. You get the gist of it. Of the Hutong. My opinion of the Hutongs improved greatly since I spent a couple weeks exploring off Nanligu, not on Nanligu. I would just get annoyed for the first week coming home in Nanligu. It was so crowded. All the shops are selling like disgusting candy, you know, like Western stuff, you know, and I'd be like, ugh. And just crowded, expensive. And then I went off into the actual Hutongs where they're cooking up food and wok, and it's kind of cool. The smells can be a little tough in summer, I have to admit. Some of the public bathrooms, the smell is really tough to deal with because the sanitation isn't that great. But other than that, like, they have a lot of character. It's not Suzhou. They're not, you know, big, beautiful UNESCO World Heritage Site gardens. So But that's the whole point, that unlike Manhattan, which they're comparing it to, where there's, unless you go up into Harlem and Spanish Harlem and Washington Heights, you know, little pockets left in other places maybe, on the Lower East Side, of what it did look like for the poor people living there. But now it's just trendy. Here you can actually still be like lower class and live a very community-oriented life, and not just some trendy Wall Street broker who wants to live in a tenement and pay $3,000 a month. This is what I was meaning about the different style of gates. It was like some are rather ornate. Dashalar area, Dajalan, has some cool stuff from the old red light district. I think the Leo Courtyard Hostel used to be a brothel. Then up here, maybe by Sanlitun, I was reading, is the expats had their brothel, maybe? It was like somewhere away from the Qing or Han brothels. But that's mostly demolished now too, I think. So you can see, you compare the buildings behind it. So we just went through. Well, it's important to preserve as much as you can. I never promised you a rose garden. It's amazing to still see roses in bloom this late in the season. They must get 2 blooms out of some of these. Let's see, this would have been a civil administrator. When they have a mythical beast, that means military. This is a stage costume from Beijing Opera. The administrative level you could rise up based on which, and they like a rating badge in the military. You'd have a different bird for each level or a different mythical beast. Costume, dragon beard ditch, worn by Yu Shijia Hutong, acted as Cheng Fangji. Last night I went to the Kung Fu thing at the Red Theater. It was okay. I mean, I was impressed by the martial arts and everything, but kind of couldn't wait for it to be over. I don't think I'll ever sit through another Peking opera again. I went to one in Shanghai, Fuzhou Road Theater there, and said, oof, it's a bit long, 3 hours. Tsinghua School. Overseas study. There's a school I went to over by Prince Gong. Boxer Indemnity Scholarship Fund, huh? Qing Envoy to the United States Minister Liang Chen. It's important to point out the first generation of Asians, when Japan and then China go through their industrialization, or modernization anyway in China, maybe not industrialization a bit later, but they send their top 1% to study in Europe and the States, and then those people who come back train the first generation of people to study in Asia at the master's and doctoral level. And A lot of these people were fluent in English. Or German or French or whatever country they're studying in. Childhood and early education. Mr. Ling Fu Peng. Ancient Melodies. Our House in Peking. Painted by Ling Shuhua. Miao Sujun painting. Gu Hongming. When I was at the Shikumen Open House Museum at Shintandi, they talk about how a lot of the poor writers would rent these rooms in Shanghai that were at the top of the first landing in the flight of steps, and they were kind of at the turn of the stairs, and they were rented out so cheaply because they were horrible to live in because of the stuffiness and whatever. But that's where a lot of the classic works of literature were written, in those rooms. So a lot of the artists in a feudal society, artists are usually pretty low down, and so they live in poor conditions. They create works of great beauty, but their actual day-to-day existence was not idyllic or pleasant in its setting anyway. Spiritually, I guess they lived rich lives. Mulligan. Well, I wanted to get over to the, it's 4:30, so they should be closing now. I wanted to get over to the Visual Art Museum. I didn't give I don't know if that's a Google Map find or what. Some of these I didn't record. Tianfuchu Cultural Center. Let me just take a walk around. That's the Ancient Observatory, Southeast Corner Watchtower. So if you're trying to find it, it's pretty easy to find. I would combine it with a trip to the Jihua Temple, which was free on Wednesday for the first 200 people. They didn't charge me, so I guess I was one of the 200. So there's some publishing house I passed, so I was walking here. There's the temple with music at 3 o'clock, 10 and 3. Galaxy Soho didn't look like it was finished yet. Chengyamen, or probably closer if you get off at Denshiku from line 5. They don't seem to be rushing people out. Maybe I can steal one of their pomegranates. They look pretty ripe anyway. Just gonna drop on the ground. Find a ripe one. Pluto's gonna take me to the underworld for 6 months if I'm not careful. I never promise you a rose garden. exhibit. Once had 3 connected courtyards, then divided only 2 courtyards south, south-facing gate, screen wall, demolished 1985. Qing Dynasty style interior main rooms, decorated partition walls, Chinese style bookshelves, 300-year-old crabapple tree, few apple trees, fragrant in spring, early summer. Famous scholar, resident of the courtyard, Zhang Shijia. Daughter Zhang Hanji and his son-in-law Jiao Guanhua lived here. Now it's got city level protection, huh? So that's what it would have looked like in its heyday, I guess. They're showing you triple, quadruple courtyard layout. That screen wall was, when we were looking at the model, they had a screen wall there in front. There's a beautiful Nine Dragons screen wall over in Beihai Park. I think there's also one in Forbidden City, but I haven't done Forbidden City yet. I didn't want to base my opinion on it from... I don't want to base my opinion of Beijing on its #1 tourist attraction. It's nice to form an opinion of a place by doing, if you can't undo it, if you go there and you have an opinion of it and a memory of it, unless you get amnesia, I guess, or smoke a lot of pot. But it's nice to do other things, I think, and have an opinion of a place without thinking of it first. Plus, I think you get more out of the visit to the super tourist zone if you have a little bit of local knowledge beforehand. Well, today turned out to be pretty nice. You gotta watch out for good air quality days and then be ready to jump on a trip to the Great Wall or something if there's a real clear day. From what people have told me, if it's smoggy here, it's smoggy at the Great Wall, even if you go all the way to Hebei province. So that's the red hotel here. But watch, when we round the corner up here, you'll see a huge hulk of a development. Never promise you a rose garden. Let me put on my mask here. You can see how dark it's gotten around the area where I breathe in. That's 2 weeks worth of soot that's not in my lungs. Particulate matter. Look at the difference between the area that doesn't get breathed in because it's against my cheek and the area that's got airflow through it. Look how dark that is. It's 2 weeks. I didn't do it. I didn't do it. Coming to get me. They're coming to get me. I'm innocent. They'll say, don't you want to know what we think you did first? And I'll say, pick something. And they'll say, what are you rebelling against? And I'll say, what do you got? The hutongs are fun because you'll see all sorts of mechanical contraptions that people are riding around on. You'll even see like the Chinese version of the Segway, which is like a one-wheeled thing that you stand on. And it's gotta be electrical. I don't know what the range is on it, but it zips along, man. I'd be scared to ride. It's got no handlebars. You just stand on it. It's like one wheel. It's like riding a unicycle. See? This is the kind of stuff that they'll just tear out the whole neighborhood and put in. It's nice and it's first world living, I guess you could say, but you don't want to lose everything, you know. What would Lower Manhattan be like if it was all big, Art Deco towers and shit? You want to have some of this stuff left, you know. If we didn't have the tenement museum, you know, that disconnect with the heritage and what how the massive people are living. If you read history, you know, you read history of the Qing and all this Ming, all you hear about is the top 1% over and over again, and you forget that there was a 99% doing most of the hard work. Such and such emperor did this, such and such emperor did that. So if you can preserve a little bit of the proletariat history, it's a good thing. Especially in a socialist country, it's nice that they do that, since it's a country with a stronger sense of the people. Although we try to say we have that in America. I guess we do. Shouldn't talk politics. It's a good video and I'm gonna ruin it. I get too political. When I was in Westlake, I stayed at a hostel that my room was right up against the playground for kindergarten, so every morning I'd wake up and the little kids would be out there doing their little kid morning exercises. It was like heartbreakingly adorable. Alright, we'll see if the Visual Art Museum's open. If not, I'll call it a day, I guess. I don't know if there are any night markets. I already did Ghost Street. I could go back to Sanlitun, but that didn't impress me too much. Hey look, Mona Lisa, they have like high-end fashion. Mala Mala. So hopefully I can get through all this. Xiang Alley. They think it comes from the word Mongolian for well. I've heard that before. Transliteration. Han Dynasty, Hong Hong, pronounced separately as Hudong. Liu Dynasty, Jin Dynasty, Hudong, commonly used northern China during the Ming. Name Hutong, officially given, where symbol for walk on the side of a couple symbols here indicating Hutong's an alley where people walked. Dong, but not the symbol for east, is it? Pathway, I guess, or courtyard. Hutong, an essential element, Chinese cities. It goes all the way back to the Western Zhou period. We've got the symbol there for Li. Sketch showing. This is the Shijia Hutong Museum. We're open until 4:30. Hello. I found out about this place from the Time Out website. It's pretty new. It's not in any of the guidebooks yet. So it's the hot ticket in town. It's actually important because it's explaining, interpreting the fast disappearing Hutongs and lending credence to reason for their preservation. On the way here, I passed the Soho, the Galaxy Soho, going right up to the Jiwa, which had the Jiwa Temple had a music performance that was a pleasant, unexpected treat of ancient music going on. Classic city planning. 9 longitudinal main streets and latitudinal main streets in a grid formation, record of trades, rights of Joe. Dadu under Kublai Khan, developed based on the ideal city layout described in the record of trade section of the rights of Joe. Residential neighborhoods are fongs, formed along main streets. Within each fong, Hutongs planned at regular distances for pedestrians. The Yuan dynasty is the Mongol reign when Kublai Khan was in power. So these are temples. Here's the imperial city. It used to go all the way out past the seas here, Nanjing and Bihai. And the Ming kind of moved the wall into here. Front lakes area and back lakes. Aerial view, Old Beijing, Hutong neighborhood. City planning, Beijing, Manhattan, similar longitudinal, latitudinal road grid. Easy partitioning, selling off of lands. Dense roads also provide large areas for street shops, increasing the business and employment and increasing the value of land. 49, this kind of grid layout made it possible for 1.3 million people to live within 62.5 kilometers. Square kilometers, Beijing's Old Town. Now it's about 24 million, I think. Standard neighborhood, Yuan Dadu. Shijia Hutong, Yuan Dynasty Dadu. Located near Qihua Men Gate, today's Kaoyang Men Gate. It's a subway stop I got off, which is it was part of Xicheng Fong. Development of Beijing Old City, relative location Shijia Hutong. This is the imperial city and the Chinese city that they're showing here. So, Sihei Yuan is the quadrangle courtyards that the actual houses, and a hutong is an alley. Sometimes you'll see it used xiang, same thing. Sometimes in Shanghai they were called lilong. They're just the back streets where everybody lives. The middle and poorer classes who can't afford to live in modern housing with all the accoutrements of sanitation. A lot of these places have communal bathrooms still. Beijing dialect fills your ears. Uniquely close-knit neighboring relations warming your heart. Excuse me. Yeah, the Prince's Charities Foundation gave him $5 million, I think, to swing this museum. Only fitting. All that the British have profited off the backs of Chinese, working class Chinese. Going back to the Opium War. The origin of the Hutong.